we're exploring how technology, the tools that we have, the know-how, the science and the engineering available to solve problems across society and across different parts of our economy change over time. And I would like to introduce a basic idea that we need to pay close heed to when we look at human history. This basic idea is that there are two different ways that technology changes in a society. One is innovation. Somebody or some group or some enterprise comes up with a new approach, a new tool, a new idea. It may be today a new product of a unicorn startup that suddenly becomes one of the great high-tech companies of the world. But innovation means something really new, and it's a breakthrough in technology that then is deployed in the economy. The second way that technology changes is through diffusion. Diffusion means that there's an idea that didn't originate here. It came from somewhere far away, but it arrives here either because some clever businessman or entrepreneur sees that idea in another country and says, we should copy that, we should deploy that here, or the originator of the idea in that other place sets up a business operation, or many times in history, the originator of the idea, by gaining, in fact, military power, by being the innovator, actually conquers another territory. So diffusion means the spread of an innovation that starts somewhere else, but that arrives to a particular location. It can arrive by copying. It can arrive by migration, that people arrive with the know-how that was developed elsewhere. It can arrive through trade. In other words, the technology is embodied in the goods or the services, the machinery that is purchased from abroad. Or it can arrive through conquest, because many times in history, a technological breakthrough gives at least a temporary advantage of one place over its neighbors, giving that place the ability to conquer territory, and through that conquest, the innovations of the conquering party transmit or diffuse to those that are conquered. So innovation and diffusion are fundamentally related but distinct processes of technological change. And a lot of human history depends on this balance of innovation and diffusion. One thing's for sure, there's a lot of innovation taking place all over the world in any time in history, and any society that cuts itself off from the rest of the world, that tries to isolate itself, to put up walls and not to know or attend to or trade with places where innovation is taking place, will likely be surprised later on, perhaps by conquest, when those innovators have added power, added force, added skills that come back to make the isolated place very vulnerable. This has happened repeatedly in history. So when we study the processes of technological change, we want to understand what are the underlying drivers of innovation. One of those is whether the society gives the right incentives to would-be inventors. A lot of modern technologies have been innovated based on the profit motive. Inventors want to get rich. They want to make new inventions that have a market return, that offer them a profit. Perhaps the most decisive single technological innovation of the industrial age was the breakthrough of James Watt in improving the steam engine in the 1770s. Now, he quickly patented his invention and aimed to get rich. He had to challenge a lot of others who wanted to copy that innovation, but this is an example of a society that offers patents or intellectual property rights to inventors, thereby giving incentives for innovation. The incentives for diffusion come from those who have the innovations to make profit or make conquest in places that don't yet have the innovation, or from those places that are lagging behind to steal, or through industrial espionage or copying to try to catch up with those who are ahead. Well, for every one of the categories of technological change, we can discern times in which there are independent innovations and times in which those innovations are diffused by imitation, by migration, by conquest. Consider agriculture, for example, a pretty basic technology. The know-how to move beyond foraging or hunting and gathering to be able to settle in one place and grow a crop reliably for survival and sustenance year after year. That was a technological breakthrough that occurred around 10,000 years ago, which occurred between the first age of globalization, the Paleolithic age, the age of the hunter-gatherers, and the second age of globalization, the Neolithic or New Stone Age, which was the age of human settlements based on agriculture. Now, this discovery of agriculture has been explored with tremendous intensity for a very long time. And one of the main conclusions is that the origins of agriculture were independent of each other. In the first instance, the Ice Age ended, climate changed, and that allowed for a new productivity of deliberate planting of seeds, and that led to independent innovations or discoveries of the know-how of agriculture in East Asia, in China, in India, in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, between the Euphrates and the Tigris River, in parts of South America, especially with the cultivation of the potato, and in places in Africa. So initially, agriculture was independent innovations in different parts of the world, isolated places where breakthroughs were made, but then came diffusion. And here is an extremely important point that relates to many kinds of technologies. For a technology like agriculture to diffuse, what is grown in one particular place, whether it's the potato in South America, or rice as grown in East Asia, or wheat as is first cultivated in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Mesopotamian lands. For that to diffuse depends on physical geography, because the climate, the soils, that is the water patterns, the temperature, the topography of the land has to be suitable for that crop to be able to spread to new locations. The innovation is a place where that agricultural breakthrough is appropriate. The diffusion has to continue in places where that same agricultural know-how can be applied. Wheat can only be grown in cool temperatures. It can't be transferred to the tropics. And similarly, tropical crops can't be grown in the high latitudes that have very cold temperatures. So the diffusion of agriculture depends on a shared ecology. And here, a very basic and ingenious observation was made by the great natural historian Jared Diamond in a wonderful book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, when he looked at the map of the world and noted that the Americas, North and South America, the two continents, are basically with a north-south orientation. Africa similarly is with a basic north-south orientation, whereas Eurasia, the great landmass that connects Europe, Central Asia, East Asia, and South Asia, has predominantly an east-west orientation. And Diamond's point was that climate tends to have an east-west orientation. What counts is how far you are from the equator, broadly speaking. If you're on the equator, you're in the tropics. If you're far from the equator, you're in the temperate zone. If you're very far from the equator, you're in an ice or boreal zone. So Diamond noted that Eurasia, because of its long east-west axis, would be just perfect for diffusion of agricultural technologies, because the shared ecology would be along a long east-west belt. Whereas in the Americas and Africa, technological diffusion would be much harder in areas that depend on ecology, like agriculture, like animal husbandry, and other technologies, because you have to cross ecological zones, cross climate zones, as you move from one place to another on a north-south axis. Diamond's conclusion was that Eurasia is naturally the place for technological diffusion, with a great advantage along a common shared ecological band running east to west 10,000 kilometers. A technological breakthrough in one part can then spread all across that band, with a huge advantage for all of those sharing the common ecology. And it is for this fundamental reason, most likely, that the long band that I have already identified as the lucky latitudes of Eurasia were so successful and indeed predominant in technological history. Because if an invention was made in China, it could work functionally with the same shared ecology in the Roman Empire, and that is in Western Europe. If an invention, a technological breakthrough occurred in Mesopotamia, in today's Iraq and Iran, it could spread to the west, to Europe. It could spread to the east, to China, over a very long stretch. So because of this basic east-west orientation, diffusion was very much favored in Eurasia, and throughout history, technologies flowed from east to west, from west to east, over a very long stretch of history. And I think it's right to say, perhaps with a lot of confidence, from 500 AD to around 1500 AD, most of the breakthrough technologies flowed from east to west, from China to Central Asia and to Europe, rather than from west to east. If we were observers in the year 1000 AD, we would say China's very advanced, but Europe, not so advanced, a little bit primitive in technology. So technology came from China to Europe during that long 1,000-year period. Technologies as fundamental as paper making, for example. Technologies as fundamental as using the compass for ocean navigation. Technologies as fundamental and transformative as gunpowder, which of course changed the whole history of world politics for centuries and centuries to come. So those fundamental breakthrough technologies diffused from east to west. Starting around 1500, I think it's fair to say that most breakthrough technologies diffused from west to east. Europe became not the laggard, but it became the leader in technological change. Why that is something that we're going to explore deeply, but I already gave a hint about it, which is that China cut itself off from the world of technological change in the 15th century, and it paid a heavy price for that. Well, we're going to come back to understand those dynamics later. But just to say, if we consider the worldwide diffusion of technology, there is no one place in the world that has gifted technologies to the rest throughout history. Each part of the world has been a source of innovation. Each part of the world has been a recipient of the innovations elsewhere. At times, technologies have flowed from east to west, and at other times from west to east. I find this rather wonderful, actually, because it says that we are interconnected and we really can gain knowledge and wisdom and huge benefits by sharing the knowledge that we have and learning from others.